Ready? Play.
The last ball has dropped on Philippe Chatrier, and it is Talking Tennis live on YouTube and Twitch. And we're here to discuss everything that's happened on day 9 of Roland Garros 2023. And I'm very pleased to see the return of Mr. Miles David of Missing the Point Pod. How you doing, Miles?
You were like 99% correct on that intro because I'm happy to be here, but I changed the name of my podcast. It's Tuned Into Tennis. It's
yes,
all good.
You are right. It is Tuned Into Tennis. I'm living in 2022.
Yeah, the days, actually most of the years of this whole decade have skimmed and screwed together, but we're here and I'm happy to be back on Talking Tennis.
So please do not search the name of the podcast. Like previously mentioned, please search Tuned Into Tennis. But yeah, so Miles is back and ready to discuss all things Roland Garros. Let's launch into it. Generally, what happens on the show, certainly the way Damien's been presenting it over the last week or so, and thank you very much to Damien for all his hard work and basically carrying the entire show on his shoulders for a week. What we usually do is we start with the women and then we move on to the men's results. I think let's maybe start with probably the most interesting women's match of the day, which was the almost 4-hour epic that was Beatrice Haddad-Maia against Sara Sorribes Tormo. We knew it was going to be a grind fest going in because we knew how those two like to play. They ended up playing the longest match of the year, which is not a surprise in retrospect. But if you enjoy that kind of tennis, which I do, it was an absolute feast. Miles, what were your thoughts on it? I mean, I don't know what matches you've seen or not, but yeah, talk me through that result if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, I am super excited for Beatrice Haddad-Maia, and it kind of feels like as a tennis fan and a spectator of hers, it's all come full circle. Because if you guys remember, Beatrice Haddad-Maia went on that really good run pre-Wimbledon last year, and then it kind of, for lack of a better term, it kind of just fizzled out as she lost in the first round of Wimbledon after winning two back-to-back warm-up tournaments. But when I first laid eyes on Beatrice Haddad-Maia, I believe it was a clay court event in like Colombia somewhere. And I thought, oh, like she's tall, she's a lefty, two things I resonate with, and she's a really good clay courter. So then to see all of those grass court results happen was just like, head scratching. And now fast forward to here we are. She finally makes the quarterfinals of a Grand Slam after all of the good WTA level results she's had over the years. And it's at Roland Garros, where I feel like the grind mentality of her game, the big hitting, the ability to stay in a point and keep things neutral, even though when you look at her game, she is necessarily like someone else from South America, like Osorio Serrano. They don't necessarily have the same structure of their games, but the fight and the grit and the ability to grind out points is all there. And she's in the quarterfinals of a Grand Slam, and I'm super happy for her.
Yeah, I'm super happy too. It's about time, really, given the trajectory her career's had and the results that she had last year, not just on grass, but also getting to the final in Canada. Yep. I think it's great for her career. There's part of me that also kind of wanted Sorribes Tormo to win it because of kind of the big matches she's had over the last few years. Obviously, that match with Kerber at Wimbledon in 21, beating Ash Barty at the Olympics. It would have been a nice moment for her, but obviously they both couldn't win. And it was an epic, and it was, as I said, like lots of long rallies, brutal hitting, both throwing in some surprises. Haddad-Maia, very excited to see what she for her, and like you said, interested to see what she's going to do in the quarterfinals. Against the winner on the same time, it was on Philippe Chatrier, on Jabeur, who came through against Bernarda Pera in what was a bit of an odd match, really. I don't know if you saw any of it. Again, I was kind of following it, but that was a breakfast first set to Ons taking control and kind of working this kind of more angle variety to her advantage as she usually does. So yeah, great result from for Ons, finally into the quarterfinals of Roland Garros, having been
where
lost
she should be.
Yes,
where she should be. I think it's really interesting that match kind of played out exactly how I thought it would, which is not something I say a lot for Ons Jabeur matches, at least recently. Like sometimes they can go completely opposite, and she is a player in general that has a lot of variety, so you're not quite sure how things are going to play out. But with Bernarda Pera, like she's an American lefty that I've seen play some really, really good matches, but then I've also seen her kind of put in some clunkers, and I just aired on the side that because it was her first fourth round, because she was playing a top 8 seed, and she's good on clay, but she can also be kind of erratic. I thought all of that would play into Ons Jabeur's hand, and it kind of did. Like once the match really got into the meat and potatoes of things, I guess, if you will, Ons just kind of went away with it and showed that she's way more comfortable on the surface and in that moment, because she's been to quarterfinals now of every Grand Slam. So good for Ons.
Yes, she has. I was like, yes, she has, because she's been to the quarterfinals of all of them. You're right. Yeah, and that's a good achievement to tick off your list. I think something I just need, I might look up at some point is who else has done that. It's going to be a long list.
I'm thinking WTA.
Yeah, maybe people.
Pavlyuchenkova has the set to her name.
Yeah.
Pavlyuchenkova has the set to her name, and now Sabalenka does too. Sabalenka's been to the quarters or better of every major. So yeah, pretty good names.
I'm seeing a question in the chat. Well, first of all, John's pointing out that Karolina Muchova is one away as well from completing the quarterfinal set. Just needs the US Open. Ghost is saying that Ons apparently is talking like she can win this thing. Is she delusional or no?
Honestly, I don't think she's too delusional. I just think she has a lot of work to do. And if we go off the basis of just her 2023 season, it seems like a little bit of a stretch, especially when you consider that she'd have to go through Swiatek and then maybe Sabalenka in the final. But I don't think it's impossible. I feel like Ons' whole what she brings to tennis is kind of like defying the odds and breaking down the impossible. So if she does it here, that would really be kind of poetic, especially considering that she lost here on the opening Sunday, first round last year. So yeah, I'm now that now that Ghost has put that into the internet ether, I guess I'm kind of hoping for it. I still think a Swiatek Sabalenka final would be beneficial because it's 1 versus 2. It's the past or 2 of the past 3 Grand Slam champions going head to head. But Ons in there, kind of jabbing and throwing her in her variety would be very fun.
Yeah, I reckon Ons in any match is going to be fun. Let's be honest. And I really want an Ons Iga semi-final. Like I think that's going to be the best possible semi-final out of the options we've got. I know, depending on who you're a fan of and who you're not, but I can't. I think there's potentially interesting combinations in there. I think we would probably be hyping Ons more if she hadn't got injured in Stuttgart. If she'd made, say, some deep runs in Madrid. I mean, if she'd played Rome. Oh, no, she did play Rome, but she had a really awful draw against Badosa.
Yeah.
But if she'd come into Rome with a bit more form and wasn't trying to do recovery, that was a winnable tournament for her, given what happened and how we saw everything kind of play out. So I'm not surprised that she's in a position. Obviously, I am on the Ons optimism train and have been since the start of the tournament. And everyone was kind of going, Nick, why have you put Ons at number 4 in your pre-Roland Garros power ranking? Like, well, this is why. So I think she's, I think it's great to have her in the mix. I, like you, do not think it's unlikely for her to win the title, but she might have a bit of a matchup problem with Iga Swiatek, who is still in the tournament, is in the quarterfinals, but barely had to play a set today because her opponent was clearly unwell. She had her blood pressure taken during the match and eventually pulled out 5-1 down. Frankly, it was a surprise it wasn't 6-love because I think Iga kind of...
She was up 4-love.
Yeah. She was up 4-love, and then Iga played a dodgy game. Otherwise, it would have been change of ends, 5-love, played another game, 6-love, job done, set over. So Iga kind of cheated herself out of a bagel a little bit. But yeah, Serenko wasn't really fit by the look of it, which is a little bit disappointing. And I'm wondering whether this might disrupt Iga's momentum a little bit.
I actually think it shouldn't, just given the fact that she's kind of not really had to sweat most of the tournament. Like the first 2 opening sets of her first 2 rounds, she won them 6-4. For a normal person that's not number 1 in the world and has shown the kind of like determination and just complete killer instinct that Swiatek had, but we might think that's very, ordinary and workmanlike. But for her, specifically at Roland Garros, those kind of results did raise an eyebrow mildly, but then she followed them up with 6-love in the second set against Buksha and Liu, and then also the dreaded double bagel if you're a Wang Xinyu fan in the third round. So I'm not too concerned. I think there's just something, and I've kind of just been I've been feeling myself say this about Swiatek for the last 2 weeks. I feel like there's something very Justine Inna, maybe if I want to be a little extreme, Steffi Graf, because I remember looking back at some old score lines of Steffi Graf at the French Open, and they were very similar, like just completely having her foot on the Sellish, yes. Just having her. What I have to do better at keeping. I have to do better at keeping Monica Seles in the conversation. Thanks for reminding me. But yeah, it just is very dominant oriented. Very not having very large lapses, and if she does have one, it's a culmination of a game, and then she kind of just gets right back on the horse, which I feel like is what you want to see in world number 1. So I'm not too concerned that she is, I guess, lacking a set to play.
No, sadly, we're not having Monica Seles, which is a shame because she'd be absolutely fascinating to talk to. And
one day we will. One day that's going to be the headline. Monica Seles on Talking Tennis.
I don't think Seles gives interviews really.
The only time I see Monica Seles, well, maybe I shouldn't say only, but one of the few times I can kind of count on seeing her amongst the tennis public is at Indian Wells. I'm not sure that she stays very far. I think she just likes the environment, which who doesn't if you've ever been to Indian Wells. Yeah, but always every year I always see like her being shown on the big screen while she's enjoying a match. So I think she keeps a low profile. She just does her her special speaking events, and maybe is still an author, I believe.
Yes.
But,
okay. Yeah, I think that's yeah, that's an interesting. Definitely interesting situation. I think she'd be an interesting person to talk to, but I don't know whether she wants to talk about the things that people would ask her about. So I think there's going to be very, very rare instance.
Do you think Serenko would take a question about how often she retires in a press conference?
No, I don't think it would go down very well.
I feel like it's a big in the space that we're in, with specific French Open questions in the press room. I feel like that one we've gotten to a point where it's fair-ish, or depending on who you ask, completely fair to ask Serenko like, hey, like not judging you necessarily for your retirement, but this is the 5th retirement or walkover you've put in the past in 11 tournaments you've played this year, which is not a great ratio.
Nope.
How would you describe? How would you explain that? How would you describe that? If I was given the opportunity, I feel like it would be dodging a very elephant in the room. It's never good to see from a bunch of different perspectives. From her perspective, I'm sure it's not great to have to walk to the net and be like, hey, I cannot continue this match. And then also, I'm speaking from a fan perspective. Not that Licia Serenko is, high up in the marketability or well-known rafters of women's tennis, but the people that look at a schedule either the day before or well in advance that want to pay money for a schedule, it would be kind of a bummer to look at her name and have a developing kind of storyline like, oh, she might retire from this match. That can't be good either,
Well, we'll make a note on Talking Tennis. If any of us get the opportunity to speak to Licia Serenko at a tournament, then let's then we'll see if we can put that question forward. So Iga Swiatek is through. She will play Coco Gauff, whose name just flashed up on the screen as just this. Yes, I will be at the event in the Birmingham, UK for a couple of days. work permitting. Let's see how that goes. But that should be that'll be a fun event. It's only like 40 minutes away from me, so I can
Is
get
Birmingham the second week of the lead up to Wimbledon, I believe?
Yes, it's the same weekend. It's the same week as Queen's Club and Berlin and Halle.
Gotcha. So that means you're going to come on over to to Tuned Into Tennis and give us your review or thoughts about the WTA events in Birmingham. Great. Awesome.
I mean, if you want to book me in, book me in.
Nick, you're literally in my notes already for grass court season, so it's fine.
Okay, brilliant. Well, I'll make sure it doesn't clash with me recording WTA Weekly, which will be returning after Roland Garros. Stay tuned for more information.
All things can happen. All things can happen. There's so much room for tennis talk.
I mean, like, this is going way off a tangent. Genuinely, the Friday before Roland Garros started, I ended up recording 2 podcasts back to back because whilst I was recording the Popcorn Tennis podcast, I got a message from Vanch saying, "Hey, can you jump on Tennis and Bagels in like 20 minutes?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Like, we'll be wrapping up in about 20 minutes. I can do that."
Why not? I think all of us, including Talking Tennis and John, are trying to like collaborate and usher in a wave of new media in tennis. I've been seeing that phrase quite often on timelines and stuff like that. And I guess that's part of the course of creating new media. You just have to be ready and flexible and ready to talk about the sport that you like and cover.
Max is asking whether Birmingham's additional clay court. No, Birmingham's grass. It's a grass court warm-up. And
Yelena Yankovic would be offended at that question. Ghosty. Yeah. Or Mac. Who asked the question?
It was Max. Yeah.
Max. Yelena Yankovic would be offended at that question, or any other previous.
Ghost is saying that apparently American Birmingham Birmingham, I should say, has a huge statue of the Roman god Vulcan keeping watch over the city. What you all got? And I'm like, well, Birmingham's a giant tower that kind of inspired Sauron's tower from Lord of the Rings. True story. J.R.R. Tolkien apparently lived in Birmingham, and apparently it was his inspiration for Mordor. That's all you need to know.
Ghost, I can't be more than 3 or 4 hours away from Birmingham, Alabama myself. So maybe I have to go check out that statue and give it a good old selfie. Yeah. I didn't even know that though. I'm not quite sure I'm the go-to person for Birmingham, Alabama trivia.
Yeah. Also, Max, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were joking. I wasn't watching the chat. Anyway, Coco Gauff. Convincing win over Schmiedlova. In the end, like, she came back a little bit. But I don't think there was much doubt about Gauff winning it. I mean, I didn't see. This is the match I know probably the least about of the women's. So I would imagine, being a Gauff fan, you probably caught it. On paper, from what I heard about it, it looked like a good win, really good win for Gauff.
I was worried at the matchup to a certain degree because I've seen Schmiedlova take out Venus on clay. But I don't think the Venus she took out on clay would necessarily compare to the 19-year-old Coco Gauff, who's into her 3rd consecutive Roland Garros quarterfinal. So, like you said, I think it was a comfortable victory. I think that is the exact kind of opponent or mold of an opponent that she should be able to handle on clay and has been handling. So I feel that the draw at Roland Garros has kind of cut her some slack. She hasn't really had to play anybody ranked anywhere around her. Now that I look at her section, she's faced Masarova, who she's beat in a final before, Jabeur, Andreeva, which was a little testy teenage feisty moment, and then obviously Schmiedlova today, testy teenage moment. I have to coin that. But yeah, workman-like performance for Coco. I'm glad that she was able to see it through and kind of get better as the match progressed. Because Schmiedlova can be tricky on clay. She has really looping, heavy ground strokes, a big, strong toss on her serve. All of those things can be tricky, especially in windy conditions, which is what Coco mentioned after the match, that it was windy out there on Philippe Chatrier. And it's just something that you have to deal with, especially the top dressing of the clay that can kind of fly up, that would be like numero uno of things that would annoy me about playing on Philippe Chatrier. Like I'm playing on clay and I have to monitor my slides and all of that stuff. And then in between serves, there's like clay in my eyes. So yeah, she managed all of that well.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Have you ever actually played on a clay court, Miles?
Not red clay, not European red clay. I played on
You played on American green clay.
Yeah, the American green hard true clay, which is softer, does give you ability to slide, but it doesn't allow you to like dig in the same way. So I've been told it's not as soft. So
I mean, look, you've got more experience playing on clay than I have, which is absolutely zero. And my only experience is cement. Anyway,
I'm playing on cement tomorrow, and it actually kind of reminds. I was talking to my hitting partner last week when we played on cement about how it kind of reminds us of grass, only because the cement has definite cracks in it. And at Wimbledon, the grass courts in general, the ball can kind of check. So yeah, we kind of like mold those two things together.
It wouldn't be cement. It'd be more. It's more similar to tarmac, I would say, but I don't know what you would call it. But anyway, can Coco make Iga sweat?
If you're asking me, I'm not going to say a hard no, but I have to look at the head-to-head. I have to look at the form coming in, and I would be thrilled yet shocked if Coco was able to grab a set. Rooting for her, but also being realistic and kind of meeting in the middle of those two things.
Okay. Yeah, I think, because I'm trying to work this out, because surely in the balance of probability, given they've played 6 times, surely Goff's going to get a set at some point. I was talking to Jack on, I think it was Sunday night. Yeah, it was last night, or it was over the weekend on the show. And he was very much in the no, this is not happening category. He's not confident that he thinks Goff needs to be returning like a maniac, and probably, and even then the forehand's going to be a problem.
All things that we know about that matchup so far, for Coco to get a set and even bigger to win, she's going to need Swiatek having an off day, and she's going to need to be able to use what her strengths are, which is her backhand and her movement on the surface, and also have a good day on the forehand. And all of those things happening at the same time is a low probability. I think maybe she gets a set. Maybe Swiatek has one of the early 2-round dips she has in the first round, or it just allows herself to be more competitive and Coco can sneak in a set. But I don't want to feel like we're getting quickly into the Sharapova versus Serena territory with both of those two in that matchup, just because I feel like it is possible that things could change in a year or two. I might be eating my words in a year or two as well. Who knows? But I don't believe Coco is going to continue to take losses from Swiatek, especially considering their age, considering all likely that they're going to play again in very similar rounds. I hope that Coco and her team, specifically the people around her that can help her with some of the technical flaws that we see, use that matchup as what propels her to do changes and make changes in her game. I hope that's what I would like to see, because sometimes it really does take a specific matchup for you to switch things in your game, whether they're small or large.
Yeah, and what you're saying about the age thing, I think, given their ages, that Swiatek's just turned 22, Goff is still 19.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be playing each other for years. At some point, Goff's got to get a win in there somewhere. I mean, the famous quote, nobody beats Vitas Gerolatis 18 times in a row. Was it 17 or 18 times?
I think it was 17, I think.
Nobody beats Vitas Gerolatis 17 times in a row. Yeah, Ghosty will probably be able to tell us because he's the one who said it. But I know there are famous matchups on the ATP side. It's 17. I remembered it right the first time. Mm-hmm. On the ATP side, where they did get a little bit one-sided with the big three.
David Ferrer, Roger, Gael, Novak. Yeah. I'm trying to think of an option for Rafa. Who did Rafa just? Yeah, great one. Yeah.
With those I wouldn't put Goff in the same category as those players who've been on the receiving end. She's too good for that. So yeah, I expect whether she's going to get it. So basically, I think what we're saying is she can. Whether she's going to get it this tournament is unlikely, but she will eventually catch Swiatek at some point.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, one day.
Maybe they play on grass, and I feel like there's an opportunity for Coco.
Yeah, on grass, Goff beats Swiatek 100%. Like, look, Swiatek needs to beat a top 60 player on grass. She hasn't done that yet in her career, which is mad given she's got to the 4th round of Wimbledon.
Yeah, and I think she lost to Jabeur at that 4th round
from a set up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that match, and like that was around about the time I was becoming a fan of Swiatek, and I was like, okay, she really got really hard fought first set, and then oh my gosh, this match is getting away from her.
How do you, as a fan of Swiatek, I'm interested, and then we can move on. How do you deal with some of the, and it's I guess in a large perspective, it's kind of easy to deal with online stuff because you can just ignore it or just mute it. But a lot of people have conversations around Iga Swiatek being too dominant, which is so interesting in the grand scheme of where the WTA is to me, because a lot of those same people were asking for some of that domination or at least some allegiance of structure at the very top, and now we have it. And I see very often on my Twitter timeline, people are like, can no one pinch Swiatek? Can no one, this is so boring, like we know what's going to happen. And how do you deal with that as a fan? Because I would imagine if you're a fan of somebody, like them beating whoever their opponent is on the day, 6-1, 6-2, 6-love is what you would wake up and want to ideally see, but I don't know how that affects the broader term of the tour and the attractiveness of matches.
Okay, I'm a tennis fan first, regardless of who my favorite players are. As a tennis fan, I would like to see things competitive. I think this question would have a different answer last year compared to this year, because you cannot say Swiatek is too dominant based on 2023. Because she hasn't won a big tournament yet. She's won 2 500s. She's been in the mix for big titles. She's been unfortunately missing out on big titles. Yeah. She's got one. She's due one this year for sure. But Sabalenka for me has been very much the player of 2023 so far. The kind of the one who's got all the headlines. And even if Swiatek wins Roland Garros, I don't think it's going to change that much because we're kind of expecting it to. On clay, different story. Swiatek on clay is it's kind of her own niche area that she has control over, like Rafa has in recent years in the past in the women's game, like Enan or Graf or Evert in particular. So for me, yeah, based on the evidence, fan or not, you cannot say Swiatek is too dominant in 2023. 2022, I kind of would have said she's setting the bar for people to catch, because no dominance lasts forever. Eventually, you're going to fall or someone's going to catch you. And that's the nature of the sport. That's how it goes. So I think that's what I would say is Swiatek being too dominant isn't a thing and was never going to be a thing. Even Federer, like we could have had this conversation about Federer in 2004. Where is this boring that Federer is winning everything? Rafa showed up the following year.
I think it's based off perspective, because I'm glad you brought up Federer, because if you asked me that question in 2007, after years of watching Federer win everything but Roland Garros year after year after year, by 2007 I was bored with it and was actively trying to find other names to root for, and that's kind of how I landed on finding Novak Djokovic interesting at the time. Things have changed. But I completely get that. I think it just depends on your perspective on if you're a fan of that player or not. Because if you already were not a fan of that player and they suddenly find mega form that brings them to multiple titles and is routining the opponents, you're not going to be satisfied with that. But if you are, then yeah, you're having the time of your life, especially when somebody shows that they're super comfortable at one tournament or on one surface, like Swiatek has shown.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, like it's, we'll see how it goes. But Federer, look, I'm a Federer fan as well, although I became a Federer fan in 2007, I would say. So it was kind of when Rafa started to really show up. And if I'd been a Federer fan before, I would have said, wait for Nadal to develop on hard, because he was kind of underperforming at the hard court majors a little bit. And that was one of the reasons why Federer was winning as much as he was. There was a really good question from Sean earlier about Iga's game on grass. I think the big thing about Iga's game on grass that's holding her back is the movement. She's not fully comfortable moving on it. I don't see anything about her game in theory that shouldn't work on grass. I mean, there's that heavy topspin forehand that Rafa made work for a couple of years. She can hit things pretty flat if she wants to on both sides, though. It's probably the lack of the less potent serve compared to others, and the movement she's still not fully comfortable with. That would be my answer to that question.
If Iga developed a better, does she have a slice serve?
Not that if she has, she doesn't use it.
If she developed one, I feel like that would yield some good dividends for her on grass. Just like Coco's slice serve helps her kind of navigate the tricky grass conditions. So if she had one of those, that'd be great. But I guess, I can also see the argument for why fix anything. But I can also see why you want to fix things, particularly on that surface, or improve things. I shouldn't say fix anything, because not too much is wrong with her game.
No. I'm loving the Birmingham UK chat, and I just want to throw some that's going on right now. And I do want to throw something out there, because I was a little bit disparaging about Birmingham in my initial description of it. Especially since I've got some really good friends. Sorry, there's a moth just flew in my eye. I really like, I think Birmingham's got a lot going for it in other ways. Like if you, there's a great culture there, really. And I think obviously, the main attraction of it is the location of Cadbury World, which if you are British, it's a British chocolate maker. Where basically it's basically like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory without the Oompa Loompas.
How is the food? How is the food in Birmingham? I asked because a lot of my friends went to the Beyonce concert in London. Okay. And I've heard some not great reviews about it. And I don't even know if it was their first time or not, but I just know
I'm going to say this now. The food in the UK is not radically different wherever you go. It's pretty much the same. The UK doesn't really... The UK is very much does what it says on the tin type food. Sometimes literally. I think the ultimate British cuisine, to me anyway, as someone who grew up in the South and originally moved and has moved gradually more and more northward up the UK, is probably the staple British thing would be pie and chips, which probably sounds very different to an American.
Because it is, I would imagine the UK version of pie and chips isn't what I have in my head.
No, because what you have in your head, I realized this when I said it out loud. I'm like, no, that's going to be a very different combination of things to you. Pie and chips is like a savory pie, lots of meat, lots of gravy, thick pastry. Chips being fries, but very thick, like this. That is.
I would try that. I would try that. Yeah, I would try it. The Southern Louisiana person in me would probably carry some hot sauce with me. I know that sounds so cliche, but I would try it. I definitely would try it.
You want to add some? Yeah, add something into the mix there. I can see why. Michael's recommending Indian and Jamaican food. Yes, I've heard good things about those in Birmingham, the UK. Carry hot sauce in your blazer. Yeah, I can't guarantee. I can't guarantee how spicy you like your food in the UK, like whether it's going to quite meet that standard. I have a story related to that, which I'll probably tell you off air. But anyway, all right. So that's the UK Birmingham tourist section of the show. Please send us a sponsorship if you are watching Birmingham City Council. Anyway, so we've covered the pie chat. Yeah. I think one day I'll try American pie, maybe. But can
I just say one thing before we go back to or go forward in the show?
Go to the men's, yeah.
I do see the conversation happening in the comments about Iga's personality or persona on the tour. And personally, I guess I have to say that her personality doesn't bother me, nor am I um not intrigued by it. Like I feel like she's a happy medium. Just speaking personally, I don't necessarily think or envision, or maybe because I'm past those years of my life, having a poster of her in my bedroom. But I can see why a child or a younger person would do that, and I can also see why somebody would be like, "Oh, she's not my cup of tea because she doesn't really do anything super broad in her persona." I look at her as somebody. I went to college. You guys in UK, you say university, I think.
Yes, we do.
Um,
We do.
she seems like somebody I'd have a really great conversation with in the library. Not well, probably because she mentions books a lot, and she just seems like that would kind of be her domain, as clay is her domain on tennis court. She just seems like somebody I would have had a great conversation with at university about a book in the library or about a course that we're both in, and she would just be a lot of kind of fun to talk about it with.
Yeah, very much the same for me. Actually, for me, her much more kind of thoughtful personality um, is it basically fits in the kind of people I'm friends with in real life.
Mhm.
And definitely would talk about books. I do not read as much as I would like. Iga, I'm jealous of how much time Iga has for it.
Where does she find it? Or maybe she does audiobooks, or does she like the physical
No,
copy?
she physical books, yeah, but
Uh,
I think she probably has time between training sessions. I mean, she's clearly an introvert.
and when you're
Um,
winning matches in 47 minutes, yeah, that does free up your schedule.
yeah. So yeah, she puts a lot of thought into her answers, and I would definitely enjoy having a conversation with her. I could definitely see a scenario where she and my group of friends would probably hang out a lot. We'd probably either talk about really deep topics or do something goofy, or probably sit very comfortably in silence for about 2 hours.
She's cool. She's cool in my book. I don't necessarily think that she's going to go down as like a game shaper of the sport, but definitely in this decade, a very very special talent for sure.
Would you not have said the same about Steffi Graf back in the day? Steffi Graf was also very
Yeah, yeah,
introverted.
similar. Like just, it's one of those. She's one of those talents that like her achievements speak louder than almost anything she's ever said or done. And some people are just like that. Like some people find the balance of achievement and persona and are able to excel in both lanes. Some people are more persona over achievements, a la Nick Kyrgios or some other players that we can think of.
Yeah.
And some others are like we're saying, Steffi Graf and Iga, like they're what they do on the court in their job that they've chosen speaks more for them than what they actually say when they're not performing their jobs. Which is,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just part of the
It,
course of human nature. Like there's a whole wide ranging personalities, you know?
it does not surprise me that Steffi Graf ended up marrying Andre Agassi because he did enough, probably had enough
Yes.
charisma for both of them combined.
Yes. What is that saying? Opposites attract? That makes total
Yes.
sense. So Iga might be attracted to somebody. Is she a Harry Styles fan? Is she?
No idea, actually.
I'm sure she who. I'm sure she knows who he is. So maybe she likes like a more bandy artistic person. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't. I think I've seen some recent references to Taylor Swift, but that's not really
Yeah.
on the radar here. So right, the men's event. So we obviously had a few, I would say, interesting results for different reasons. Let's address the elephant in the room of the men's match, which is the other almost 4-hour epic that happened, and it was 1 minute short of 4 hours. Holger Rune against Francisco Cerundolo. And it ends up being decided by a 10-point tiebreak. Cerundolo was ahead in the tiebreak. Holger got back. That there was a lot of momentum swings in this match,
Mhm.
and it kind of really kicked into gear towards the end when they were both just literally playing through tiredness, maybe even a bit of cramp. Kind of like the end of the 2020 US Open final, but maybe slightly less awkward. Yeah, it was definitely dramatic. And I think Cerundolo's probably frustrated he didn't win it because he was really close.
I actually have pegged Cerundolo. That didn't sound right. I've noticed Cerundolo this whole clay season and this just in general as how fluid his game is. And I thought that would really take him far, especially on clay. I think he's had I think his only ATP title has been on clay in the post Wimbledon clay court swing. And then he's had some good results in Miami, which is a little bit of an outlier, but maybe because maybe the support he receives there as being a South American and something about the conditions there allow him to play his best. But I didn't expect him to win the match, but I expect him to do exactly what he did in the match, which is extend it, make it really awkward for Rude, push him physically, and ask the question, of Rune, and ask the question of Rune if you can hold this out physically, because I'm going to be here all day. Cerundolo doesn't seem like when he's fully held and when he's fully healthy, and sometimes when he's actually carrying something onto the court, he can still push past it and ask those questions of his opponent. And Rune, at this moment in his career, is the perfect person to ask those questions to, because we've seen him struggle in 5-setters, even in 3-setters. And yeah, he got through it today, but it was very close that he wouldn't have. So that was a very, very good match, possibly outside of maybe Taylor Fritz and Render Kanesh for maybe more than the tennis, probably the match of the men's side so far of the tournament.
Oh, interesting choice. Okay, because I think a lot of people would be going for Monfils Baez or
Fair.
Altmaier.
Fair. Yeah, I actually think I would still pick Fritz and Render Kanesh actually over all those other three. I would actually do Fritz, Render Kanesh, center Altmaier, then Monfils and Baez personally.
Yeah. I think the Monfils Baez thing was down more to the crowd getting involved in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Sinner and Altmaier was just fabulous tennis. I didn't watch Fritz Rinderknecht. It didn't go 5. I think that's only memorable for.
Maybe I'm putting too much weight in that, and I feel like I am because Fritz allowed that to happen. Like, he gave me something. Sometimes in tennis, when somebody does something completely out of their character, it just sticks with you because you're like, I've watched you 17 times in 17 weeks and this hasn't happened. So maybe that's why I think that match was more interesting. But the tennis was really good too, because Render Kanesh was asking him questions at the net and just bringing out some good things in Taylor Fritz game. But this match, Rune versus Cerundolo, I can see why somebody would put it above all of the matches we've just mentioned.
Yeah, I would need to have a look. I think the fuss around this match is obviously, it was another dramatic finish, and we've had 5-setters almost every day bar one this Roland Garros. It's been a very, very exciting men's tournament.
Is that why it feels like it's been on forever?
So many sets.
Yes.
To be honest, though, what seems to be dominating the conversation is double bounce gate, which happened early in the 3rd set, I believe. I couldn't see it. Like, I only caught the end of it, so I only found out about this on Twitter. I had to be in meetings for work, and so I only found out about this afterwards. But yeah, there was a clear double bounce that the umpire somehow missed. And
somehow, isn't that interesting how, like, they have some of the best seats in the entire stadium and somehow things just go above them? Like, they don't see things, they don't remember things. It's just very interesting how that happens and keeps coming up.
Yeah, because they're human. And
yeah, they are, but humans sometimes have responsibilities that supersede just being normal humans sometimes. And sometimes we kind of think about our favorite athletes as more than human. So I feel like because the umpires are officiating to very, like, sometimes bigger than human celebrities playing on a court, we expect them to not have those moments. But it is sports. I just feel like it's a miss in tennis that there isn't something built into the occasion and the event to help with this, Oh, there goes my tweet. That double bounce happening on the side closest to where the chair umpire is reason number 568 that professional tennis needs video review technology implemented into the sport, like, expeditiously.
yeah. So here's the thing. I'm not saying you're wrong. Like, I could see a scenario where video review could be useful. However, I'm currently in the UK, and
Mhm.
video review is a weekly discussion point in the case of the Premier League, and the way it's been implemented there, that just causes an argument every week.
Mm.
Because the way I don't know if you're familiar with Premier League football, but
I'm
basically,
trying to.
there's too much sport to keep up with. But usually, when there's what's called a video assistant referee decision (VAR), it causes an argument because it very much depends on the angle of the camera they're using sometimes, or there's a guy in the studio who tells the referee what he needs to do, and there's clearly some issues with the technology involved, because so there've been some questionable decisions despite the fact the purpose is a video review system, and they still somehow made the wrong decision.
I mean, the other sports I do follow in American football, and basketball, there's been video review of tight moments, and then also moments that just generally need a second look for as long as I've been a fan. And I don't often, maybe because it's so baked into how I think about those sports, I don't come away having this conversation here thinking that there's too many arguments about them getting the wrong call, as opposed to like a specific example in football. If the football and the player carrying it got across the line of scrimmage or the line in the end zone appropriately or not, like was it actually there? Because sometimes they zoom
Yeah.
in and it's to the centimeter or millimeter or however. And then in basketball, if the shot was released out of the player's hand right before the alarm or buzzer went off to see if it was fair. I think those moments where like it's just about fairness in the core of what makes the sport. The core of what makes tennis run is the fact that you only get one bounce to hit the ball over the net. Anything more than that, the point goes to the other opponent, right? If we're not getting that right, I feel like we're missing the core of what our sport is, or one of the cores. I shouldn't say that's the ultimate core of the sport. We should at least be able to get that correct. And I remember, I think it was the October Roland Garros, something very similar happening where we at home get the benefit of constant replays, like not even in the middle of the match, after the match, seeing a ball bounce twice. And that was between Laura Sigamoon and Kristina Mladenovic.
Mm-hmm.
I see the argument that some people make that you should always be able to call it on yourself and that everybody knows where it's a double bounce, but there's officiating and a lot of people that make this whole sport move. And if none of them can come together and use technology that we're having access to in 2023 to make efficient and correct decisions about whether a ball has bounced twice or not, I don't understand what we're doing. It just seems like we're all just like circling the drain if we're having these kind of conversations every year, maybe at the same tournament. Who knows if it's a tournament issue or a surface issue? I'm not saying that it is, because we've seen things happen on hard and grass, but I'm thinking about moments at Roland Garros where a video review system could have nipped this in the bud for everybody, because we at home that have no stock in it are being able to judge very easily whether a ball bounced twice or not, and the people that it matters for cannot. And I feel like that's the problem.
Well, Cerundolo was very much saying he was protesting the ball's bounce twice. He stopped the point, tried to stop the point, and then ended up losing the point because the umpire called him for hindrance.
Which is silly. And I guess if you're an umpire, right, and you're trying to be impartial, and obviously Cerundolo was in an advantageous section of the court and just in general in that point, I can see if you're trying to be neutral as an umpire and be like, well, of course he's going to argue that it double bounced, right? So I can't take his argument as the full weight because he wants to win that point, and he was in the aggressive part of that point. But realistically, it needs to be seen, especially in a moment like that where it wasn't like he was running for a drop shot. It was just a really short ball in the court. I can't understand why there's a little small device called a tablet in every umpire's chair, and it's not being utilized to review moments like that, especially moments that make or break somebody going from the fourth round to the quarterfinals and getting $200,000 as compared to $300,000. It's just those small moments in tennis, which is a game with small margins anyway, they matter. And something like reviewing a ball bouncing once or twice shouldn't be that hard. And I don't see why we only have these conversations when people are like irate and furious, and it feels like no one's even bringing them up when we're more balanced, which is where we should be bringing them up to get to a conclusion, so things don't happen like this where we're all up in arms again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I feel like tennis kind of runs off, as a lot of sports do, the idea that the official's word is final. And if the official gets it wrong, tough luck.
I hate that tough luck. I mean, I get it. Sometimes you really just have to take things in sport and in life on the chin, but it could be neutralized. Basically what I'm saying, like if that was the same way we get challenge systems that are broadcasted on the biggest sports and the biggest arenas in the world to see if that ball was a millimeter in or a millimeter out, the same thing could apply for if that ball bounced twice or not. It would just put everybody at ease except Ostapenko. She wouldn't believe it, but everybody else would be at ease.
Ostapenko wouldn't believe any point that was called against her.
She doesn't think she does much wrong in tennis and or life. I don't think so.
She kind of hits the ball out and then goes, "What did I do?"
Yeah, that's what she does.
She's like the meme with the guy with the gun at that SNL sketch.
I don't think she has. I don't think she's a very self-aware person. I think she just drives along the highway listening to her own music, doesn't stop for anybody, and just does her own thing. And that's kind of the tennis she plays. And if it's working, it's working. And if it isn't, she's going to try to convince everybody else that it's working, and everybody else should agree.
Yeah, that sounds fair. So
I'm happy for Cerundolo, and in general, South American tennis is having a moment in this tournament. I'm happy for Cerundolo and Echeverry, who also won shortly after. Was it shortly after?
He was after the Swiatek match. So there was I think one of the upsides of the Swiatek match only lasting about half an hour was the crowd on Suzanne Lenglen had 8 hours for just 2 matches, and the organizers probably breathed a sigh of relief going, we can get 4 matches done today. So Echeverry came after that, and Echeverry beat Yoshihito Nishioka 7-6, 6-1, 7-6, 6-love, 6-1 in what was and in I didn't see any of this. This is the match I know the least about because I was kind of looking at other stuff. But Echeverry won a tie break that I saw quite a lot of fuss being made about on Twitter of being really, really good, and then just drove away with the match, which doesn't surprise me because I think Nishioka was probably out of steam, having won a really brutal match against Shepard 2 days ago.
Yeah, and he played. I think he had played 3 straight 5-setters. Two 5-setters. One against JJ Wolf, and the other one in the third round against. Just bear with me. Zybovich. That's why I'm trying to pronounce it how you would pronounce it in his native tongue.
That's how I've heard Damien pronounce it. I'm going to go with Damien.
How did he pronounce it?
Shepard.
Okay. I was going to say hopefully we don't have to hear about it too often, but he's a good player just with some spotted past and a spotted past and present. How about that? But yes, back to Echeverry. Great match for him. Getting to the quarterfinal of a Grand Slam for the first time in his career. I've had my eye on him. I don't remember if I first watched him play at the Houston ATP 250 clay final in Houston. I don't remember if that was the very first time. Yeah, he did. I don't know if that was the very first time I had seen him, but I know I was left very impressed because any moment that Tiafoe had like a very ebb and flow, not being so focused as he should have been, Echeverry was right there to take advantage of it. And I like those kind of players. And he also has very good weapons to dictate in his own right. He has a good serve, good forehand, a lot of good spin on it, and he's tall. He's 6'5", so a lot of his ball just jumps up, and a ball that gets high up on him doesn't really bother him as much. And speaking of the first set tiebreak he won against Nishioka, he had a set point against Djokovic in the opening round of Rome.
He did.
He really should have won that set, because Novak was not playing well at the time, and Novak kind of squeaked that out a little bit, probably more off of his aura and presence and the ability to just not miss in tiebreakers, which is something that he's really good at. But I'm glad that Echeverry has kind of kept the momentum going well into the second week of Roland Garros, because I think he's a good story.
Yeah, I agree. I think Echeverry's a great story. And I remember, like, I think we really made a fuss of him in Rome because obviously Djokovic is his hero growing up. So the fact he got to play him was
Oh, that was Thomas that had the sign that said,
yes.
I think he said
How many points behind Novak? Yeah.
Yes, how many points behind Novak? Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Does that make him go down in your estimation?
I was just about to say, I wish it wasn't Novak, but I mean, the idea that he was really reaching for the best at a very small point or way behind lets me know a little bit, makes me know a little bit about his character. Like, he's willing to do the one foot in front of the other and do the things that have to be done that maybe aren't so pretty and glamorous to get to where he ultimately wants to get in his goal, which is, I'm assuming after this tournament, I'm assuming he's going to be top 30. I haven't looked at the ranking.
Let's have a look at the live ranking.
Or thereabouts, I would imagine, because he was
he's going to be, he's on his way there. Let me get the live ranking up and have a look.
Live ATP singles. Let's look at it.
Yeah. I've got it saved on my handy device, ready to go as and when needed. I have to refresh it though. But
oh my gosh, I was so close. According to the live rankings, he's 31.
31. So he's on track, depending on how the next couple of weeks go, for a Wimbledon seeding.
Yes.
And obviously, well, let's see, because obviously the seedings at Roland Garros were very heavily affected by about 5 withdrawals. So, depending on who ends up playing Wimbledon, whether we're going to have Berrettini and Cilic and Carreño Busta there.
Oh man, I'm one of the few people that misses Berrettini.
Oh, I miss Berrettini.
Oh really? I feel like people have moved on for the most part. They kind of just think of him as Netflix famous and famous for wearing Hugo Boss. Like, his tennis isn't usually part of the elite part of the conversation, but I like his tennis. I can see how it's a little one-dimensional in some ways, but I miss his aura on the court. I feel like he gives a good watch.
I think he would be. I think you need to have him in the mix for Wimbledon, because obviously he's one of the best grass court players out there. I know that without him, the draw is going to descend into chaos. Although, having said that, I have high hopes that Sinner Alcaraz will provide some stability at the event. But we're not talking about Wimbledon yet. Someone who, let's see, what other match we've got? Well, while we're on the Echeverry match, let's circle round, because his next match is going to be against Zverev, who won the match that who played the final ball of the day to beat Grigor Dimitrov in straight sets. It was not that, Grigor Dimitrov could have made that match competitive. He could have made that match competitive and flunked every opportunity to do so. That is probably my ultra harsh assessment of what happened there. Zverev is playing well at the minute. He seems to be, he's saving the points that he's lost he's losing from Roland Garros. And he's up to 34 in the live rankings now. He's going to be or down to 34, I should say.
I was going to say Zverev was down that low. I mean, I guess that would track. He wasn't playing for the last 6 months of the season, and his first 6 months of this year hasn't really been spectacular. So I guess that makes sense.
So he just about be seeded for Wimbledon probably, but he's getting a season back on track with this run in Roland Garros. I know he's not going to be a popular person to have in the last 8, but it was. We were hoping maybe Dimitrov would
pinch him.
pinch him, or at least inject some kind of chaos and some flair into the match. And he was up a break in the second set. He had multiple break chances to get back on serve in the third. It just wasn't happening. It just wasn't his day, really.
I don't think maybe this would have not been something I said maybe 8 or so years ago about Dimitrov. I don't feel like Dimitrov has enough weight behind his shots, especially against somebody like, not that I think of Zverev having the super weighty shot. I just think Zverev can put just that extra bit of oomph behind his ball, especially on his backhand and his serve, and kind of start the points out in his favor. And Dimitrov just was kind of behind the 8 ball every time a point really got started. Like, he brings variety and flair and like flash and sophistication, if you will, into a point, but like actual effectiveness of pushing his opponent back or doing anything that makes his opponent uncomfortable, I don't see him doing that too often. Like, it takes a little bit of the opponent just having a bad day, which Zverev hasn't had too many at this tournament. So it's a bad matchup, and I think Zverev has the head-to-head over Dimitrov like 7-1 or something like that.
Yeah,
unfortunate, but I it's kind of crazy how we've gotten here in Dimitrov's career that getting to the 4th round of a Grand Slam is something that should be applauded. But it should. It really should. Like, he got to the final in Geneva. Yeah,
Roland Garros, which is his weakest major, and clay is not his favorite surface. He prefers a much faster court.
Yeah. And that makes sense, because I think the faster court makes up for the fact that he doesn't have a super weighty ball that bounces high or pushes you back the way Zverev does more so in his game.
He remains baby-fed, the inferior version of the great Swiss. And then the final match of the day, which wasn't the final match of the day, it was actually technically, I think,
the first men's match.
Match of the day. Well, yeah, the first men's match, because the Cerebus Torme Haddad Meyer match was still going when it got going. Was Casper Ruud beat Nicolas Jarry 7-6, 7-5, 7-5 in a match that was somehow straight sets. But Jarry was up in. Jarry made those sets incredibly competitive, and it felt more like a 4 or a 5 setter, just because I think Jarry was up in at least one of those sets. He was like, there were a lot of breaks. Ruud was pushed during this match, and yet found a way to win in straights. And he's someone else who seems to have woken up at Roland Garros.
Yeah, he needed to, because his ranking was going to take somewhat of a hit if he didn't get closer to that final like he did, or into the final like he did last year. I actually had Ruud on upset alert, and actually picking the upset of Jarry versus Ruud, because they had just played in Geneva
yesterday.
Yeah, I feel like it was a smart pick. I feel like Nicolas Jarry does some of the things that would make Casper Ruud uncomfortable, and if we're just based it off of form in the tournament and coming into the tournament, Nicolas Jarry had all of that well and above what Casper Ruud has. And it's also somebody from South America that for some reason I don't click it. When I think of South America, I look at like the Argentine or the Brazilian flags, but I have to start giving some respect to the Chilean flags. So yeah, that's a good win for Casper Ruud to get back to the quarters of a tournament he probably loves and considers his favorite. I think he considers Roland Garros his favorite tournament.
Yep, that isn't like a clay 250 in the middle of Europe somewhere
with high altitude. Yeah, I never. I'm not quite sure how to base my opinions and conversations around Casper Ruud these days. I'm really not, because the few times I've thought he was going to, even with his season not being great, the few times I thought he had matchups that were going to allow him to start getting things right, he hasn't. And the matchups that I thought were going to like really derail him have propelled him forward. So he's just been kind of an enigma this season. He really has. And I'm not sure how. I'm not sure if things. I guess this match is an example, but it was only. I say only because those were all 3 tight sets. But I'm interested to see what's going to happen if he gets into like a 5th setter, because his match against Rune in the semifinals of Rome made me worried about him not being able to close matches, particularly against higher or roundabout opponents of him being in the top 10.
Yeah, and actually that Rune match in quarterfinals has got a lot of interesting questions around it, because like you were saying, with the matchup, it should favor Rune. However, Casper Ruud has pushed Rune in every match, and I think Rune only beat him for the first time in that Rome semi-final.
And was down a set in 4-2, I believe, yeah.
Which, if that repeats itself, I don't see Rune coming back, because he looked cooked after that match against
I love
Cerundolo
that
today.
phrase. Cooked.
He was cooked. Like he was the walking embodiment of the dictionary definition of the tennis cooked.
Yeah, but the thing about Rune is I'm not sure if he's using that as gamesmanship or if he really is just that cooked. He bounces back from it. Like even in the Rome final, I know it's best out of 3, not best out of 5. He pushed Medvedev. Like that wasn't necessarily just a walkover match for Medvedev, and he had to really extend a lot of energy to come back over Casper Ruud in the semifinal. So I'm not. I think because he just turned 20, and I think he said he tries to get anywhere from 9 to 13 hours of sleep. I think he said that in a press conference not too long ago in Roland Garros. If he gets an adequate amount of sleep and is just up for that matchup against Casper Ruud, he has a full 24 hours, I believe, to turn around to play that match. I give him a little bit of the edge. Yes, I know Casper Ruud has been to the final and has been further than a quarterfinal at any Grand Slam, and this would be a first quarterfinal win for Rune. I give Rune a slight edge, like 51-49. I do.
I have less confidence in Rune's physicality at the minute, and ability to recover, and over best of 5. I like before today would be like, yeah, Holger Rune is making the final. Now I'm like, I think this is going to be a semi-final shootout between Ruud and Zverev.
I think he has the fight and the will and the determination that I like to see that supersedes anything else his body's telling him, especially if his body's only telling him, hey, you're winded and you're fatigued. If his body was telling him, hey, there's a potential injury here, I think we'd be talking about something different. But if it's just fatigue and just lack of stamina, I feel like his determination to get a Grand Slam with all of the momentum he has on his side is going to potentially push him over the edge if that match gets tight and physical, which I would imagine is going to be physical from the out.
Yeah, I mean, I would. Yeah, it's going to be. I don't see it going down in straights either way. It's not going in straights. And I still think the longer the match goes on, the more it favors Ruud.
I just voted Rune, so I pushed that 20% up to 30 something.
Okay. Yeah, I might have to fix that. But with obviously I've also kind of already put Zverev into my semi-finals. Do we see Echeverry threatening him much?
I'd love to see it. Yeah, like I'm envisioning that right now. Actually, I'm moving that muscle in my mind to see it because I would love it. I think it would keep. I'm not sure the last time we've had an unseeded man in the semis of Roland Garros. Actually, 2022 it didn't happen. In 2022, 2021 it didn't happen. Yeah, it would be nice. I think it'd be a while. Yeah, it'd be a while as opposed to the women.
Cecchinato in 2018.
Yeah, maybe even Cecchinato was like a low seed. Maybe I think that sounds familiar. That he was a low seed, as opposed to the women's side. There's been an unseeded player in the semifinals every year since 2018. So I kind of want the chaos to happen on the men's side a little bit.
And it's guaranteed to happen again this year. With Pavlyuchenkova versus Mukova happening tomorrow. Actually, should we talk about tomorrow and see what we think is going to happen?
Pavlyuchenkova gives me great vibes. I don't know why. Well, actually, I do know why. We have history, not like personal. And well, we have history way back in the day and currently because I really enjoyed John talking to her, I believe, at Madrid on the Talking Tennis channel. If you guys haven't watched the interview between John and Pavlyuchenkova, I definitely suggest you go back into the archives and give it a watch because it's good. Pavlyuchenkova gives good conversation. And I remember back in 2009 when I tweeted about this earlier last week, I believe, that I remember doing tennis highlights of hers way some years ago, and it was her first year kind of making a splash on WTA Tour when she made the semis at Indian Wells in 2009. And I just remember being enamored with the way she hit the ball. It was the way her stroke production was, the sound of the ball, the way she dictated. It was just very interesting to me at the time, and she's kind of kept that. It has ebbed and flowed. She's had injuries and stuff like that, but I believe there's something about this court. There's something about the stakes of a Grand Slam that really bring out the best in her, and I think she has a really good shot against Mukova in the quarterfinals to get to another Grand Slam semi.
She definitely does. I think it's going to be a close one. I think Mukova is on a good run right now, and has a lot of momentum behind her. She And I think, there's a lot of people who I think, well, not a lot of people. Vanch put her in his semi-finals way earlier, like before the tournament even started.
That's because when she beat Sakura, she became the number 8 seed. So yeah,
effectively. And there was a lot of questions around Pagula's form, which and no one accounted for her having food poisoning. I don't think many people do.
I think that's going to be such an interesting matchup. Actually, both of those women's quarterfinals are such different variations of how they play. It's like Mukova massages the ball and redirects things really well based off of her timing and hands, and Pavlyuchenkova is all about slapping the ball and putting pace on it and dictating. And kind of similar for Svitolina and Sabalenka. I think Svitolina's mindset is more aggressive. I just don't think her natural firepower is anything to rival the players she's once faced, and then somebody like Sabalenka, whose firepower is up there with the best in the world. So that's good. Both of those matches are interesting as far as just how they go about constructing their points and winning them.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right. It's lovely contrast of styles. I think we're in for an absolute treat in terms of quarterfinals tomorrow. By the way, Pavlyuchenkova's ranking is currently 333, which is like, I don't know if that would make her if she got to the semis. I don't know if she'd be the lowest ranked player to make the semi-finals of Roland Garros, but someone will dig that up if it happens. I can see both being super competitive. Svitolina's obviously made a career out of counter punching off pace, trying not to get overwhelmed. So that match with Sabalenka is going to be interesting. There's obviously going to be a little bit of tension in there, and for political reasons. And Mukova, Pavlyuchenkova, again, that's the way they kind of counter each other is going to be absolutely fascinating. So those are your opening two matches tomorrow. I think. Are you thinking then it's going to be a Pavlyuchenkova Sabalenka semi?
For some of the political reasons you mentioned, that probably would be somebody's worst nightmare. But for me, I don't mind it.
Yeah, but we don't think about that. We're tennis fans.
Yeah, we're tennis fans. Tennis wise, I actually may prefer to keep some of the contrast going and see a Mukova versus Sabalenka final or semifinal, just because I think, I know Mukova's ranking is a bit higher than Pavlyuchenkova, and if she gets to the semi, that puts her in a better position to get back in the top 20, which I feel like was where she deserves to be should be. Yeah, she belongs there. So maybe I'm like I said before, 51-49 pulling for Mukova, and then I'm definitely pulling for Sabalenka to get to the semis, just because she's having an incredible season, and it's some of the stuff I've been wanting to see from her for years, with the consistency matched with the firepower. So.
And this is probably the most consistent season we've ever seen for Mukova. I mean, how many times she's been to the last 8 of a Masters 1000 and quarterfinals? It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, she's had that adage of being kind of made out of glass, and hopefully her glass is hardened. It's very what is that word? Tempered glass. Yeah. Maybe hopefully her glass is tempered.
Well, I guess so. By the way, looking it up, it is Cecchinato was unseeded when he reached the 2018 Roland Garros semi-finals. On the way, he beat Novak Djokovic famously, and Djokovic is playing tomorrow against Karen Khachanov, a player who, although he has an 8-1 record against head-to-head, is also a player who has given him headaches in the past. Obviously, that one win in the Paris Masters final, pretty sure he managed to find a way of irritating him a couple of times in a major. Khachanov very comfortable on clay. Yeah, I think
I'm calling something incredible. I'm calling an incredible upset.
You think Khachanov's going to beat Djokovic?
I more so want Khachanov to beat Djokovic.
Right, okay. The anti-Djokovic propaganda is coming out.
Yeah, it's more of a want than I actually firmly believe he will. But I do think he's capable of doing something insane and causing havoc to the more anticipated Djokovic versus Alcaraz semifinal. Yeah.
Okay. I know there's some bias going on here. I personally want a Djokovic Alcaraz semi-final. I really want this to happen. I think it's highly likely to happen. And I'm interested more to see sort of whether Djokovic drops a set or not tomorrow. I think it's possible. But I think it's going to, talking to Jack about it, very much depends on his forehand. and how that's developing. So
I think it depends on his physicality too. Like if they were playing the kind of match that Rune and Cerundolo plays, I give an X to Hatchinov. I think Hatchinov, even though Hatchinov has played a long well, that really wasn't a super long 5-setter in the first round.
Yeah.
I think Hatchinov has the better stamina and endurance right now. I think Djokovic is depending on something very Iron Man-esque to kind of help him.
Well, yes, yes, literally, by the look of it,
literally Iron Man-ish. So, I mean, Djokovic has obviously not been playing badly. I'd be remiss to say that he was. I think Karen gives himself probably the best shot to pull off that upset, more so than he ever thought he would in his career. And he said as much because I think he said in his press conference that getting to that semifinal of the U.S. Open last year definitely opened up his eyes a little bit more. That hey, like I can be more than just a sneak into the second week kind of player. I can be the person that's here on the final weekend, and hopefully he takes some of that mojo into the match against Djokovic, because Djokovic still is vulnerable. I know he's a number 3 seed. He's won 2 Roland Garros titles before, but I still think he's vulnerable. Not even saying from an anti-Djokovic perspective. I think he's vulnerable.
He's definitely vulnerable, more so than maybe other years. Maybe not as vulnerable as he was in 2017 or 2018. But no, he's vulnerable. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I still think he's going to win Roland Garros. I actually think he's going to win it. Still, I'm sticking to my guns on that prediction. Which means I think he's going to beat Khachanov. The question is whether he's going to drop a set or not. And
you think he's going to beat the winner of Alcaraz and Tsitsipas?
Yes.
Okay.
And judging by Alcaraz and Tsitsipas is the night match tomorrow. I think Alcaraz has very much control of the matchup with Tsitsipas. I think that's going to be straight sets. Actually, I think one of them might go to a tie break, but I think Alcaraz is winning that one. I would say the Djokovic-Khachanov match is the more interesting of the 2 men's matches happening tomorrow. And we are covering it live, so keep an eye on the coverage that we're doing for Alcaraz versus Tsitsipas, just because, hey, you're going to get a great conversation out of it, and you may get someone describing something super dramatic. So who knows? So that will be fun, I think, regardless with Alcaraz Tsitsipas. I think that there'll probably be a little bit of aggro in there. But yeah,
really? You think there'll be aggro between Alcaraz and Tsitsipas?
That has been in the past.
Okay, I'm thinking about that. Was it this year's Barcelona or last year's Barcelona? Last year's Barcelona, or he took like a really
year before that.
2021. What happened? I know that was a dramatic match, but was there aggro?
I don't know. I think our Tsitsipas was a little bit irritated by how that match turned out.
Well, he lost like an 18-year-old. So, I'd have been irritated too. But it's also Tsitsipas. I feel like Tsitsipas, at maybe first glance, is a fighter, but when he actually gets into the fight, things go a little haywire.
He's a small kid who doesn't know how to fight.
Yeah, he wants to. I think he wants to be a really good like Greek champion, but in the actual moment where like championship nature comes out, it doesn't come out for him. I think if Alcaraz makes that match tight and it doesn't become a blowout, even if that match gets tight, I'll give Alcaraz the edge just because he's Alcaraz.
You didn't catch the Medvedev reference, I don't think. But
what did you say? I'm sorry. I didn't
he's just a small kid who doesn't know how to fight.
yes. Yep.
That's all we need to say. All we need to say.
Or a small cat.
I think that might be something else.
Yeah.
That might be something else Medvedev said about I can't remember who it was. But
I think he was talking about the chair umpire, but neither here nor there.
I think he was talking about the umpire. But yeah, so I think Tsitsipas is probably not winning that. I think it sounds like you're in agree with it, but that's more based on Alcaraz than Tsitsipas.
Yes. Yeah.
Fair. I think actually, to be fair, that's what I think as well. I just think that Alcaraz has just got Tsitsipas's number.
That was his first like major win that made everybody kind of stand up and take notice, was over Tsitsipas at the U.S. Open. And since that match, Tsitsipas has only taken 1 set off of him, and that was in the Barcelona quarterfinal last year. So
yeah, which is the one with the infamous thwacking the ball at Alcaraz instant.
Yeah, maybe he's gonna have to keep on doing that to throw Alcaraz off.
As long as it doesn't get
Defaulted.
defaulted.
Oh my gosh, when was the last time somebody got defaulted in like a major quarterfinal in singles? Has it ever happened?
I don't know. Not that I'm aware of.
Women's, men's, anything. Wow.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I did spend about an hour tonight looking up whether anyone had won a major benefiting from a retirement, or at least how many times that happened after what happened with Swiatek Serenko.
Amelie Mauresmo won the Australian Open in 2006.
2006.
I think 3.
Twice. She benefited from 2 retirements in that draw.
It was 2 retirements or 3?
2, from what I saw.
Well, and 1 in the final. I think the one in the final counted as 3. I think. I'm not 100% sure.
I only saw 2, including the final.
Gotcha. Okay. But yeah, and then Novak's infamous round 4 is the closest we've gotten from like a
quarterfinal. Yeah,
a real primetime match happening.
Serena was never defaulted in a US Open final.
She just got a point. She got a point penalty that resulted in the loss of a point on match point, which was so stupid. But.
And that was a semi-final.
Yeah.
Serena Williams. I honestly believe that moment is the lowest moment of Serena Williams' career.
That moment in 2009.
Yeah.
The fact that there's so many to choose from at the US Open is really wild. Because I was comparing 2004 to 2009, 2009 to 2011, which I think the 2011 one was probably the one that she was most at fault for, because she did yell out at that forehand and Sam Stosur put a racket on. And in 20, I think knowing how long I've been seeing Serena play, I think that 2018 is the one that sticks out in memory, because there was so much on the line.
That was, I mean,
2009 Serena was nowhere near as appreciated as an American icon the way 2018 Serena was and would have been if she had won that match.
What happened in the 2018 final was somewhat provoked a little bit
by the chair umpire.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I think she definitely was on the losing end of something that didn't need to be called out, I guess.
She snapped, but I think most people would have.
Especially if they felt like they weren't doing anything wrong. But the same thing happened in 2009. She felt like she didn't foot fault, which I guess that's totally different, because that's a argument of where you sit and where you see the foot, as opposed to like whether her coach was actually telling her what to do or not, and she was communicating back with him. Because a coach can tell you to flail your arm up in the air all day during the match, but if you're not paying attention to it, you're not technically being coached. Whereas if your foot goes over the line, no matter what style, which way, if it goes over the line, that's considered a foot fault. And I guess she was more mad that it happened in that moment, and then she took out her frustration, not even probably realizing that if she had gotten one more point penalty, it was going to be a loss of point, and all of that culminated. Boom, match over.
For me, that was kind of Serena bringing it all on herself. In that moment, and it wasn't a particularly pleasant side of her that we saw in that moment. And for me, compared to the other moments you're talking about, I mean, I didn't even remember 2011, and I don't even know what you're talking about with 2004.
You don't know what I'm talking about with 2004?
No,
that's depending on what generation you're in. That is the most infamous one, because she was absolutely done wrong in that one. Like
the Capriati US Open.
Yeah, that was that one.
What exactly happened? Because I'm a little too young to remember that.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to the full match on YouTube in English commentary and everything. She hit a backhand down the line that was inside the line, not like a painter, like a niche of the line. It was inside the line, and the line umpire did the little, this little thing right here that signifies it was in, but the chair umpire said the point. Or gave the point to Capriati, and then when she called the score out, Serena was like, "What's going on?" Like that was my point in the infamous. That ball was so in. Do I have to speak another language? And that's where that came from. But it was drama because one, there was no Hawkeye at the time, and 2, Capriati didn't say anything at the time, even though the ball was so clearly in. It wasn't even one of Serena's like screaming winners. It was just a more or less traditional backhand on the line. Capriati did not say anything about it, and then when she was asked about it on court by the press or by the press, she basically essentially said that, well, we all have tough calls, and Serena ended up winning that game anyway, and the crowd booed her. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Serena history for today.
Serena history. Yeah. No, I think a lot of those are like, that was a McEnroe. No, there's plenty of players who show off that kind of side, but no, 2009 still beats that for me.
I think she even acknowledged that there was someone, I forgot who she calls her alter ego when she gets a little feisty. I think she, you know what? I think in her book On the Line, she acknowledges it, and I need to go back and reread that and see what she calls that alter ego that kind of came up in that 2009 match. But yeah, it wasn't pretty to see. I mean, was it entertaining? Very much so. But was it pretty? No.
Yeah. No. Okay. So we've done that. I think, yeah, we'll agree to disagree on sort of Serena's lowest moment, but I think we probably got different criteria for measuring it. I'm just going with how much of that was her fault. And 2009 for me was all her fault, whereas the others had mitigating circumstances.
Fair enough.
So, okay. Well, we've done Serena history after previewing tomorrow at Roland Garros. Tomorrow at Roland Garros is also quarterfinals day in the men's, women's, and mixed doubles.
Didn't even look at the mixed doubles draw.
Yeah, so tomorrow, well, I can read out. So mixed doubles tomorrow, the 2 quarterfinals are on, well, actually, no, there's 3 quarterfinals happening. So there's Kostyuk and Arevalo against Andreescu and Venus. That'd be entertaining if Andreescu wins the mixed doubles title. There's also Sutijadi and Middlecoop against Chan and Martin. So less well-known players. I think everything else below that is juniors. And then the women's doubles, it's everyone's favorite doubles team, Bushkova and Sorribes Tormo, taking on Melika Martinez and Ellen Perez. With the other women's doubles team being Anna Bondar and Greet Millen taking on Coco Gauff and Jessica Pegula, who are currently surely the title favorites.
They're the highest seeds remaining, number 2.
Yeah. And the men's doubles, we've got number 1 seeds Wesley Koolhof and Neil Skupski taking on Marcel Granollers and Horacio Ceballos. Whilst in the other one, the number 4 seeds Ivan Dodik and Austin Krajicek will be taking on the 11 seeds Kravitz and Puetz.
Max just mentioned that Venus Williams picked up a Roland Garros mixed doubles title back in 1998, which she also adds to her mixed doubles title in Australia of the same year. And
wow.
She's two mixed doubles titles away from having won a Grand Slam in every category except singles, Australia and French. I think she should focus on that if she's really kind of targeting the actual twilight of her career. I think a mixed doubles title.
It's exactly 25 years. 25 years since she achieved it. So that's something. Okay. All right. So, Miles, before you go, a couple of things, but which, obviously, of the matches that we're looking forward to tomorrow, which are you most excited about?
Singles or doubles?
Any.
I think I'm most excited about Mukova and Pavlyuchenkova. It's just something about the way Pavlyuchenkova can smack a return, and Mukova's serve, especially her second serve, does hold her liable of doing that. Something about it was maybe the nostalgia of watching Pavlyuchenkova, especially beat Mertens in the round before like she did. They were really good slow-mos of her just attacking second serves, and I love seeing that. She's relentless. She lets you into the match, and I think it could be very interesting because Mukova can massage the ball all around the court, and if Pavlyuchenkova was moving well, she can slap them hard. So I think that'll be my match of the day, potentially.
That's going to be an early start for you then, because that's 4 a.m. your time.
I can make it happen, ish.
You can make it happen. Yeah, I would probably agree that that's probably the most interesting match happening tomorrow. Although Svitolina and Sabalenka is very close for me.
It is close. I just the political undertones make me kind of just want to not watch it because I'm going to
Mhm.
watch it, but I can already see where things are going to go, regardless of what happens at the very end of that match. I can already see the tweets from journalists and dissertations about why this is wrong and all that stuff. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
can
Uh,
avoid it.
I think the doubles match that was probably most interesting is Bushkova Cerritos Tormo against Melachar Martinez and Perez, because it's a huge opportunity for whoever wins that one.
Very much so. Yeah. I hate that. I hate that all of that controversy happened in the doubles match. I feel like it was. There's an old saying I want to use right now, but it's on the tip of my tongue, and I can't quite get it. It
Mhm.
was just it was made a bigger deal than it had to be by all parties involved. Literally every single person involved just made that whole moment bigger than what it had to be. And I also don't love the fact that the doubles players, Ceribes, Tormo, and Bushkova, are necessarily like receiving the brunt of being evil or terrible sportsmen. I think they
Mhm.
had a bad moment. I think that's
Yeah.
pretty non-negotiable. Like they definitely should have butted out of that whole situation. But in terms of Bushkova, she's won the Sportsmanship of the Year award in 2020, and I don't feel like that was a fluke. I feel like she's a good sportsman. I just think that was a moment that everybody allowed to get way bigger than it would have had to be.
Mhm. Yeah, I can see why. I mean, my overall take on the situation is the default was the correct decision. I wasn't impressed by the behavior of Bushkova and Cerritos Tormo.
I don't think I think the default was the right decision based off of the reaction of the ball girl. If the ball girl had literally just been like, "Oh, like you hit me," and wouldn't have reacted, I'm not saying she's right or wrong for a reaction. She's probably a teenager and was overwhelmed by the moment of everybody kind of looking at her and having her be the star of the show. When in actuality, ball people just kind of don't even factor into the equation very often in tennis matches. I feel like that's where most of her emotions came from. But had she not had that reaction, it probably would have been something we wouldn't be talking about right now. And
Mm.
that's where the rule gets muddy, because are we ruling based off of people's reaction or people's actual action and intentions?
Yeah.
Because Kato's action and intention was so run of the mill, so unordinary. It was the reaction of the ball girl, and to make matters worse, unfortunately, the highlighting of it by Bushkova and Ceribes Tormo. And Ceribes
It's
Tormo,
another.
yeah, Ceribes Tormo indicating that there was blood was really a step over bounds, because, like, I'm not saying it's impossible that a ball getting hit at you would cause blood, but that particular scenario, I can't imagine her actually bleeding from that.
Yeah. Look, with the regardless, we could also add that to the list of things chair umpires missed.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And we circle right back round. So yeah, Miles, thank you for coming on. When's the next episode of Tuned to Tennis coming out?
Tomorrow, actually, I did a midweek review with one of my good friends, Steven, who uh, has Roland Garros as his favorite tournament to watch and talk about and all that stuff. So we go over the first week shenanigans, including some of what we just talked about with the double scenario, some really good runs and the names that kind of made their mark in the first week, and that'll be out tomorrow.
Brilliant. So everyone, check your Spotify's or wherever, or Apple Music or wherever you get your podcasts from, and the latest episode of Tunes to Tennis will appear. And Talking Tennis isn't going anywhere. Stick around, subscribe for more content. We've got commentary tomorrow coming for definitely for Alcaraz Tsitsipas, maybe more. We don't know yet, but definitely Alcaraz Tsitsipas with Shrihari and James. And then we've got the last ball drops happening tomorrow. John is back for that one. Maybe someone else as well, but special guest as well. But we'll have to wait and see before we confirm anything to you on that. Well, thank you all for being brilliant, for contributing to the conversation. And thank you, Miles, for your very helpful insights into the world of tennis. We'll see you all tomorrow. Take care.
Take care, guys. See you later.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.